Hi everybody, Donna-Leigh Perfect here. Hey, I just recently did a live interview on here with the amazing Emma McKellar. Emma's actually my coach and she wanted to interview me on here, and we did an interview probably about a fortnight ago now. And from that interview I got many of you reaching out to me wanting to hear my story. And I thought, well, here I go. I'm going to let you know all about my life and what's got me to where I am today. And I've only been on the isogenics for about 45 days. I'm a personal trainer, and I was always reluctant about trying these products. I was always a big advocate for eating raw, eating fresh, and prepping meals and that kind of thing. But since trialing this isogenics product, it's just had a phenomenal impact on my life. So I'm just going to share about myself, and it'll be a bit of a long video, so just grab a drink, grab a herbal tea or your water or whatever. I've got my greens here and I'll share with you. So I am a twin, and I have a twin brother, and I come from Auckland, New Zealand. And life was pretty normal for me growing up until I was 7 years old. Everything sort of seemed pretty normal in our home. There were times where my mum and dad used to argue, and my father drank quite a bit. But I guess as a 7-year-old, to me, things seemed pretty normal. And things were just, we have 5 kids in our family, and so it was hectic. Life was hectic. My father worked, my mother worked, she was a nurse, and so life was busy with 5 kids. That all changed one morning in August in 1973 when I was 7 years old. I remember waking to the piercing screams of my mum, and I jumped out of bed and tiptoed out into the corridor, and I stepped into the corridor as my mother ran screaming past me with an absolute look of complete terror on her face. My father was yelling and swearing, chasing her down the hallway and down the stairs with a knife. I couldn't believe what was going on. I was trying to take it all in, and as I followed my father down the stairs, my mother was at the base of the stairs trying to grab the handle of the sliding door to try and escape, and I saw my father stab my mother. She stumbled along the side path to the front of the house and she collapsed to the ground. And I was 7 and I saw my mother take her last breath, and it was terrifying. It was devastating. I was in complete trauma, complete shock, screaming, and within seconds there were crowds of people around us and sirens, and I remember looking back and seeing my father drive off in the back of a police car. We were all scooped up, the kids, and we were taken to a cousin's house where we sat on their couch in their living room, and I'll never forget hearing on the radio that my mum had been murdered on the news. And it was the most surreal experience. I just couldn't imagine, that really that's my mum they're talking about on the radio. And we stayed with my cousin for only a few days, and then we were pillared off to the first of many, many foster homes. And we were separated for a short period of time. I was separated from my twin brother, but we were separated from my older brothers and my sister for all of the time in foster care. And the first foster home I went to, the man was an alcoholic. So back then, I guess there wasn't much screening of foster parents, and So he was an alcoholic, and I remember one time my sister was coming to visit us, and he used to lock us, my twin brother and I, in our bedroom at night. We couldn't get out. And I remember hearing the knock, knock, knock on the door, and he went to answer the door, and it was my sister coming to visit. And I remember him saying to her, "You don't need to come and see the twins anymore. They are doing fine. They don't love you. They don't need to see you." And I remember hearing this and being in my room and just being absolutely beside myself, going, what? Banging on the door and crying, and all I heard was the door shut, and my sister left. Another time we were in this house, and he asked me to run a bath for one of the girls in the foster home. And I was only just turning 8 and I had no idea how to run a bath. So I turned on the hot water and left it to run. And the little girl got in the bath and scalded herself. And the foster father, just went off his nut. And he ordered me to go into his bedroom, and he pulled the belt off his jeans, and he pulled down my pants, and he just started belting into me with his leather belt till I bled. And that was one of the first experiences of being in foster homes. There was a really happy foster home experience, a lovely Catholic mother with her 2 daughters. She was a single mum. And I was really devastated when I arrived into her home. And she was a really compassionate person, and she used to read stories to me in bed at night. And these children's stories just enabled me to escape the reality of my trauma for a little while and into the story, which had a really significant impact on me as an adult, and why I believe I have become a children's author. And my children's books were channeled to me, and I have no doubt that it was probably my 7-year-old self writing these books. And it's just been a phenomenal cycle back. The last foster home I went to, so every time we were moving from foster home to foster home, we were just told impromptu that pack your stuff into we had a rubbish bag, so you just chuck it in the rubbish bag, you get into the car and you're whisked off to the next foster home. And at the same time we're going to that many schools, so I had 13 schools, 13 foster homes, and I'd just make friends with kids at school, and then I'd be moving to another school, and I was a real target for bullies because I guess I looked different, I acted differently, I was traumatised, and I probably, wasn't, clothed very well. And so I was a good target for bullies, and I would get bashed, and I would get secluded from kids' games and just left on my own. And the abuse was verbal, the abuse was physical. And then I'd go home, and then there'd be more abuse in the foster homes. The last foster home I went to, I was there for nearly 4 years, and the foster mother had something against me, I don't know why. But one time, this beautiful little baby, she was a Maori baby, her name was Marama, and she arrived at the foster home all by herself. And I was told by the foster mother that this little girl was my baby, and that I had to look after her. I was only 11 and I had no idea how babies were born, so I just believed her. I believed, oh well, this must be my baby. I don't know how, but it is. So for quite a few months I was waking up and feeding her, I was changing her nappies, I was bathing her, and she became a ray of sunshine in my life. I felt connected, I felt loved, I felt needed, and it was a phenomenal experience. And I bonded so strongly with Marama. And then one day when I got home from school, I went to my room and Marama was gone. And I went to the foster mother and I said, "Where's Marama?" And she said, "She's gone back to her family." And I said, "What do you mean she's gone back to her family? I thought I was her family." And she just said, "You won't be hearing from her again." And that was the coldness of this woman. She was just a whole nother level. I asked her one day, there was a parcel that arrived at the foster home, and I asked her what was in the parcel, and she turned to me and she said, "You are a nosy little bitch. Come into the kitchen with me." And she gave me these pieces of paper and a pen, and she said, "You're going to write on these pieces of paper 1,000 times that I'm a nosy little bitch." And then she stuck them all over the walls in the kitchen where we ate our breakfast, lunch and dinner in this foster home. And the other kids used to tease me, you know, for having all this writing up on the wall. And then one day when I was 12, the authorities came to the house and they said, Donna, you have two choices. You can stay in foster care till you're 18 and free to leave, or you can return to your father, who's been released from prison, back into the home where he murdered my mum. And that was the most difficult decision that I've ever had to make in my life. I chose to go back to my father because I would be reunited with my older brothers and I would be able to see my sister again, and that meant everything to me. But at the same time, I entered a home that was full of old memories of my mum, even though there was no contents of hers, no furniture, nothing, no belongings. There were still these memories and this nightmare of the night that she was murdered. And I had ongoing, recurring nightmares that I was delirious, actually. They were awful, awful nightmares. And I know now that this was post-traumatic stress disorder. And anyway, 5 years living with my father, who was an alcoholic, schizophrenic, unpredictable murderer. And he slept with a knife next to his bed every night. And he constantly threatened us with violence. In fact, so much so that my brothers and I, we had a survival plan while we were living with him. We all had like our muster stations in case of an emergency, and constantly living in fear. Well, he drank himself to death when I was 17, and this was where I woke up from my nightmare. And I was taking drugs and alcohol to numb my pain, and I realised I was going down a really, really dark path, and so I decided that I had to change something in my life. And I reached out to Lifeline, which is a 24-hour organisation that gives you support and you know, somebody to listen to. So I reached out to Lifeline, and it became the start of my grateful healing. And from there, I got counselling. I went and saw a psychologist. I went to a hypnotherapist. Had cognitive behavioural therapy. It was a phenomenal journey. And I became a Lifeline telephone crisis counsellor with suicide prevention training, and volunteered on the lines in Sydney for 2 years. And I moved to Sydney, and I started a company from a company I was working for in Auckland, set up their Australian operation, and it was in the fashion industry, and I was so blessed to have this opportunity. It was an amazing opportunity, and I'm very proud of that time in my life, because all the naysayers were saying to me in Auckland, you can't go to Australia and set up this company, it's crazy, you know, Aussies don't like Kiwis, and you're going into a market that's going offshore and it's getting smaller, and you think you're going to get a slice of this market, you're crazy. And in the 7 years that I managed that business and set it up from scratch, I took it from nothing to $1 million turnover. So I am so proud of myself that I achieved that, and it helped me to believe in myself. And I went back to high school, and I got my trade certificate in clothing and textiles, and I actually got the top apprentice marks in New Zealand and won the Apprentice of the Year Golden Shares Award. And having been a school dropout, having been bullied at school, and constantly traumatised at school, I was a real failure at school. So to be able to achieve this was just a phenomenal, turning point in my life. And I got married, and I had my 2 beautiful children, and they are now 17, almost 18 and 21, and they're the most phenomenal human beings with so much resilience. My marriage broke up 11 years later, and so my daughter was 3, almost 4, and it was a really tough time in my life. And I put my daughter through Paradise Kids Grief and Loss program to help her with the grief and loss of our divorce, and it really helped her so much in dealing with her emotions and the grief and understanding where her emotions were fitting and sitting into her body. And I then did some training as a personal trainer, and I became a personal trainer with advanced nutrition, and I moved into a speaking career, and I became a speaker, and I was also a leader for Speakers Tribe in Queensland for 2 years for Speakers Institute, which was an incredible experience, and I was able to speak overseas in Las Vegas. I was at the Her Story Women's Global Empowerment Conference last year in Las Vegas at their inaugural event, and I got to share my story on stage, but also I got to share my story in the Volume 1 anthology series, which was an inspiring group of 10 women's stories from all over the world, sharing their stories of overcoming adversity and resilience, building resilience in their life. And that's been an incredible journey. And then this year I got married again, and we started an amazing program for children in schools called the Dream Guards, helping kids stand up to bullying using my amazing peace tools that came to me in a peaceful meditation. And these peace tools have transformed lives. In fact, they've saved lives. Teenagers have reached out to me when I have done keynotes in high school saying that thank you for sharing your story, and I was suicidal, and your story, your message, your peace tools have completely turned my life around and given me purpose and given me hope in my life. And that's just phenomenal. I mean, that's the most amazing gift that I am so grateful that I've been able to transform lives and help lives and inspire people because of my story. And I feel so blessed because of my story. And at the beginning of this year, on January the 1st, my marriage broke up very devastatingly, very unexpectedly. And I spent a good 2 or 3 months in complete grief and really struggling with that loss. And I really believed that I would be with my husband forever. But there were certainly red flags in our relationship, and things that didn't sit right for me, and lessons that I needed to learn about myself and about being true to who I am and setting boundaries and being respectful of myself. So I'm now really grateful for those lessons that he taught me that I needed to learn about my life. And I went to an NLP timeline therapist and worked on my limiting beliefs and patterns that were continuing in my life that weren't serving me. And I spent 3.5 months working on myself, and it was the most incredible experience. It was so fast and transformational, and it inspired me to go and actually study to become a NLP practitioner and timeline therapist with hypnosis. And I've just graduated last week, and now I am a life coach, helping people transform their lives holistically through positive mindset, shifting limiting beliefs, eradicating old patterns that hold you back, and being the best version of yourself through healthy eating and exercise as a personal trainer. And I feel the healthiest I've ever felt in decades. I have got to my ideal weight, in fact just under my ideal weight, and I'm now building muscle. I am so full of energy, my skin is glowing. I am so happy to be single and make choices every day that are about me and about embracing who I am and loving me. And I just want to help as many people as I can transform their lives and be better versions, because I know that you can do it. Each and every one of us can overcome any challenge. And if I am not an example of that, I don't know who is. And so I just wanted to share that story today, raw and real. And I hope that I've inspired you in some way to believe that you can overcome anything in your life and live a life of passion and purpose. And if I can help you, please reach out to me. I'm here. You're not alone. And just remember to love on you. Peace out.